Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Iron. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. Today we're going to talk about some general rules of POE economies, simply because I've gotten a bunch of questions about it over the last week or so. This won't be a general overview of the metamorph economy. We do those every couple of weeks whenever there's a new league, and this won't be an overview of the meta of different ascendancies and different popular items. This is just going to be 3 simple rules for you to take with you, whether you're trading in hardcore or softcore leagues, as you are interacting with goals for yourself in the new year. So if you're hoping for a quick discussion that will give you a couple of rules of thumb to live by, that will generate you new currency, then this is the discussion for you. You can go ahead and like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about more videos just like this one. And of course, without further ado, let's get right into it. So there's 3 rules that we've got here today that we're going to observe as we compare some prices and take a look around the market. The very first rule, that if you were a new player to Path of Exile, if this is maybe your first time that you've ever reached maps, or if you're simply new into trading and you're excited about trading in Path of Exile and you're excited to trade in League, then this is going to be a very, very helpful tip for you. First off, prices in League gradually move up to meet prices in Standard. This is a simple rule that you can use every single league. It doesn't matter if it's 3.9, it'll be true in 3.10, it'll be true in 3.11, it was true in 3.8, it was true in 3.4, it was true in 3.0. General rule, prices in League gradually move up to meet prices in Standard. If you are in guild right now, if you're in our guild, in the Good Guy Gaming, or if you're in any guild and you go to your guild trader and you say, hey guild trader, how is it that you're always able to make currency for us? One of the ways that they do it is simply by pulling up these 2 windows. The 2 windows that we've got here is Standard, that is directly above my slightly balding forehead. That is a standard Path of POE Ninja website currency listing as of the recording of this video. That's what's above my slightly balding head. Over right above our G3 logo is the same exact thing, but in Challenge League, in Metamorph League. These are the prices of currency and what they are going for in Standard League and compared to in Metamorph League in 3.9. You can simply look at these 2 comparative charts and inform yourself what you want to do with your currency, because the general truism is true that currency moves up throughout the course of the lifetime and the life cycle of a league to match what is in Standard. There is so much more currency accumulated in Standard that it has almost never happened in Path of Exile where Standard prices move to meet League prices. We've actually got a video. There should be a card floating around your screen at somewhere that you can click on if you want to analyze or learn more about why Standard prices are the way they are and why League prices move towards Standard prices. But for the purposes of this discussion, the simple rule is you can look at your in-League prices and then compare them to your Standard prices and know whether or not the currency you have is going to go up in price relatively soon throughout the majority of the league. For instance, the greater distance in between 2 prices indicates for us that there is going to be a jump in price soon-ish. Now, you might be saying, okay, Iron, there's a lot of speculation right here. You're telling me that the chart that is displayed for League is always going to move up and match the chart that is in Standard. Yes, that is the general trend. So then the next question is, okay, Iron, well, how do you know when that's going to happen? Why is it that Exalts in, let's say, Standard League right now are trading for 173 Chaos, but Exalts in League are only at 132? What's the explanation of this difference, and can you tell me when they'll go up? And why is it that Exalts, for instance, in Metamorph are trending down right now? There's a lot of different factors that are going on at any given moment in any particular league as to why a currency is trending up or trending down. But simply put, you can safely bet that at some point throughout the course of the league, Exalted Orbs are going to rise back up and match and potentially exceed and then drop back down towards that price of where they're at in Standard. So for those of you who are new players and you're saying, well, Iron, where should I put my Chaos then? What should I dump my money into? Because right now it seems like Exalted Orbs aren't necessarily moving at a rate that's fast enough for me to grow my own currency. in League. That's a perfectly fine assessment. All you have to do is take a look at Standard and take a look at League and know if you convert your currency into something that is going to appreciate faster, then you will make that currency back faster. So, for instance, if you take a look at Divine Orbs right now in Standard League, they are 36 chaos a pop. That's a lot more room to move than Exalted Orbs right now, because Divine Orbs in League are only 11 chaos a pop. So when you consider Divine Orbs have got 35 chaos to grow in terms of their evaluation, and then you look at Exalted and you say 132 to 173, while it might be a larger numeric value, the percentage of growth, Divine Orbs are going to go up 300% over the course of the rest of the league. So they are a very, very safe bet for you to invest your currency in. Orbs of Annulment are another great example. Right now, Orbs of Annulment are sitting at 8 chaos a pop. They need to move up before they match the final transfer day in Standard. They need to match 34 chaos a pop. That is a massive, massive growth potential between the two. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that if you turn all of your chaos into Orbs of Annulment or all of your chaos into Divine Orbs today, that tomorrow you'll be sitting on a mirror of Calandra's worth of currency, right? Because the market changes on a daily basis. But it does mean that over time, over the length of a course of a league, your currency will go up in its evaluation if you move your currency into any of these that still have room to grow throughout the length of a league. So that's the first basic rule that you can learn. And it's very simple. You can flop your currency, move your currency. You don't even have to flip your currency. When I say flop your currency, I simply mean at the end of each of your Path of Exile sessions that you're done playing, just dump your currency into one of those particular currencies that you've decided to accrue, and then sit on them until they're valued at a spot where you're happy with their currency, sell them, and then go with your Chaos or your Exalted, go purchase whatever new stuff you want to purchase, or hoard it all together for yourself if you're just into hoarding a bunch of currency. That's the first rule. So there you go. If that's the only thing that you're here for, I hope you learned that one, is that prices in League gradually move up to meet prices in Standard, which should give you a guideline and a game plan for exactly what currencies you want to move your Chaos into as you accrue it. Second rule, demand for mapping tools. This includes currency, this includes prophecies, this includes fragments, this includes maps themselves, etc. Everything that is related to mapping, sextants, chisels, again, sacrifice fragments, or fragments for the Shaper, or fragments for Elder, fragments for Adziri, fragments for Ubra Adziri. Doesn't matter what it is, everything that is mapping related, every expenditure that can be put into mapping reaches a tipping point when player access reaches its peak. So what I mean by tipping point here is that stuff will be at its highest value once the number of players who can access it is at its all-time high. In other words, once players start leaving a league, once a league total population starts going down, there are less players demanding those mapping tools, which means the turnover rate on them goes down. Right? There's less people who want that same amount of stuff, and so it takes longer for that stuff to sell, which means that prices come down as people want to sell more stuff, which means more people buy it, which means, again, we've got a healthy economy going on of supply and demand. So demand for mapping tools reaches its tipping point of when it will go from a profitable thing to a from a more profitable thing to a less profitable thing when player access reaches its peak. So the key here is not identifying in a league when player count is at its maximum. We all know that's opening weekend, opening week, right? People come back in, try a new league, and then they walk away, they leave, right? That's just the reality of it. It's the reality why at the start of new leagues, it's pretty much a common thing now that Path of Exile is a top played game on Twitch during opening week and opening weekend. It's a reason why YouTube videos go absolutely nuts in the weeks leading up to a build up to a new league. It's a reason why the number of trades that are going on and the number of items that are available is at an all-time high and an all-time movement trading between players during the first weekend to week of a league. That's the player count total. But that's not what we're interested here with this second rule for POE economies. This particular rule is focused on when most players are reaching their peak of mapping. So, for instance, if it takes most players, let's say one day, one full day, one 24-hour period, to get a character from Act 1 to, let's say, white maps. I recognize right away that a lot of you are going to say, Iron, 24 hours to get to maps. Are you insane? I'm simply saying let's take every player who gets to maps into consideration, right? Not everybody's a speed racer. Not everybody's going to take less than 20 hours. Not everybody's going to take less than 14 hours. Not everybody's going to take less than 10 hours, right? Every single moment that you push and get faster and faster at playing Path of Exile and advancing through the campaign, you are probably not the average player, right? You're a much more above average player. In fact, dare I say it, this isn't just me, sucking up to you because you're watching a video. If you're watching this video, you are probably an above average Path of Exile player, because you've got knowledge enough of the economy to actually be searching and using the various tools that are at your disposal. The vast majority, the average player, does not do that. The average player boots up the game, plays the game, and that's all they do, right? So if we take 24 hours just as a hypothetical number, right? If it takes 24 hours of playtime, and we say that the average player plays a video game, a single video game, for 2 hours a day. Let's just say that's the average, right? It could be that some players don't get to play for 5 days, and then they play for 2 days, and they play, 7 hours each day. Then that's, over the course of a week, it still equals 14 hours, right? Over the course of 2 days, right? So if you take 7 days and you say it takes 14 hours of gaming time per week is the average player, then it will take the average player just under 2 full weeks of gameplay before they reach maps. All right? Now, this is, again, these are all assumptions. I get it. I get that these are wild assumptions. So if you leave me a comment down below that says, oh, Iron, these are all wild assumptions, and how could you make these numbers up? I get it. I'm with you. These are wild assumptions on numbers, but the principles still apply. Whatever time it takes for players to get to maps, that is when the demand for mapping tools, currency, prophecy, fragments, maps themselves, will reach its tipping point for players wanting those things and for players selling those things. So that is when map fragments and prophecies are going to be at their highest value. So if you want to know what prophecies you should be investing in, what you need to do is pay attention to how many players are making it into maps. You can do that simply by tracking map prices and whether or not map prices are going up or down, and that's going to tell you whether or not more and more players are accessing more and more maps. That gives you a lot of good information. It doesn't give us, a firm statistic to say, hey, Grinding Gear Games released an announcement today that 1 million players have reached maps thus far in League. We don't have access to that kind of data. GGG just doesn't show it. But we do have access to data on maps, and we do have access to things like prophecies. So, for instance, I'm going to take a look at 2 prophecies here today for your consideration, both in Standard and in Metamorph League, for you to consider this second rule of thumb. This first prophecy is going to be the Jeweler's Touch. Where is it over here? Did we lose it already? Jeweler's Touch, right here. Okay. Jeweler's Touch in League right now is going for 13 chaos. The Jeweler's Touch in Standard is going on average for 15 chaos. So the reason why I use the Jeweler's Touch as a measuring metric is because the vast majority of players who are going to use a Jeweler's Touch need it because they are most likely progressing through the story, or they are most likely progressing into maps and going from a 4 link that would naturally drop, or even a 5 link that would naturally drop all the way up through Act 10. But they simply don't have a 6 link yet, and so they're going to buy the Prophecy, the Jeweler's Touch, in order to secure a 5 link for themselves because they haven't gotten lucky enough to hit it with fusings themselves or for it to drop. If the Jeweler's Touch is on the rise, then you can be sure that there are more and more players who are leveling characters and who are continually progressing through the story to the point where they are reaching maps. So the Jeweler's Touch is just one particular prophecy that you can keep an eye on to know, hey, how close are we in between League prices and Standard prices? And if those are relatively close to one another, then there's a whole bunch of people who are getting to maps, who are making that migration. First off, you might say, well, Iron, why is it that low-tier players couldn't simply buy up the Jeweler's Touch? Like, why couldn't a player who, when they're at level 30, use the Jeweler's Touch? Well, they could, but the vast majority of players aren't going to use a 13C prophecy at the moment. It was 20C, I want to say last weekend or the weekend before. They're not going to use several chaos on a prophecy for a piece of gear that they aren't going to take with them into maps, right? They're going to use that currency on purchasing a prophecy that is going to guarantee for them a 5 link that they can use in maps. So it's a good indicator on a portion of the player base. Again, not everybody knows that the Jeweler's Touch even exists, right? So again, this isn't, a hard and fast rule. This is a general rule that you can observe the economy. As the Jeweler's Touch goes up, more and more players are leveling early in a league. As the Jeweler's Touch goes past actually standard prices, oftentimes it does, then you can recognize that you're getting closer and closer to tipping point for the number of players in a league who are going to reach maps and who do need to acquire various mapping currencies and prophecies in order to trade up. So you can really tell when the early portions of the player base and the player population reach maps by watching the Jeweler's Touch. It's one indicator. It's not a surefire thing. It is an indicator of what is going on. The next thing that I wanted to look at here that's also an indicator of a league and its health is called Monstrous Treasure, which, where is it here in Standard? I'm probably just missing it right here. Yeah, here we go. 20 Chaos in Standard, and right here in League, it is 7 Chaos right now. So in League, it's 7 Chaos. In Standard, 20 Chaos. Now, before you go nuts and buy a whole bunch of Monstrous Treasures, like I've done, I'm holding a bunch of Monstrous Treasures myself because I know for a fact they're going to go up. Right now, Monstrous Treasure is a massive, massive prophecy for any player who has reached the top tier, the end game of their mapping goals for Path of Exile. What Monstrous Treasure does is Monstrous Treasure takes all of the monsters in a map when it goes off and it puts them into strong boxes. This means that for players who are mapping at the top end of Path of Exile's Atlas experience, the end game experience in Path of Exile, for players who are at the top end of that, what they will do is they will buy up Monstrous Treasure, get it to proc in as highly a quantity, item rarity map as they can, monster quantity, monster density, the best maps that they possibly can. Players only have access to that information once enough players have actually researched a new atlas in order to figure out what maps are the best and what combinations are the best to actually run on those maps. So Monstrous Treasure is a great, great prophecy for actually boosting your returns on a map once you've figured out what the best map is to do. So it takes all the monsters, shoves them into strong boxes, and then strong boxes are craftable. Hey, if you're new to the video, you might not have even known that. If you're new to Path of Exile, you might not have even known that. Guess what? Strong boxes are craftable. You can use alchemy orbs on them, you can use scouring orbs on them, you can use chaos orbs on them. You can roll strong boxes to have specific modifications. So, for instance, when players learn where divination cards drop in what map layouts and which map layouts have the most quantity of monsters, oftentimes Magic Find characters will go into top tier maps, use Monstrous Treasure, craft boxes so that way they include high level items or a bunch of extra divination cards or divination cards of a certain set. Like, let's say if you're doctor farming in burial chambers, you're going to roll boxes until it says drops, divination cards in stacks of 8 or something like that, right? If you're looking for unique strong boxes. There's lots of different ways to do it. But the point being, top-end players want Monstrous Treasure. So, if you're looking at Jeweler's Touch and you see that Jeweler's Touch is on the way down, and you look at Monstrous Treasure and you see Monstrous Treasure is on the way up, then you can see that the number of players, our general rule here, general rule number 2, the demand for mapping tools, currency, prophecies, fragments, maps themselves, reaches a tipping point when player access reaches its peak. When the top-end players are going after Monstrous Treasure and most players aren't going after Jeweler's Touch, you know that there is a healthy portion of the player base that is into maps and is farming maps regularly, which means there's going to be a bunch of players who want to buy maps, who want to buy prophecies like this, who want to buy currency that alters maps. They want to buy fragments, etc. So if you're looking for how to make currency as you're making maps, as you're making these things, these are 2 ways to do it. You can look for Jeweler's Touch, you can look at Monstrous Treasure to see exactly when demand for mapping tools are going to reach its peak. The third thing I want to say today is that new stuff is risky. New currency is risky. New crafting recipes are risky. New divination cards are risky. New prophecies are risky. New maps are risky. And new atlas strategies are risky. If at this point in the discussion you've taken a look at our first 2 principles and said, this G3 Iron guy might know something about the POE economy, maybe I should listen to him. Please listen to me on this. Let's go take a look at some of the new stuff inside Path of Exile with the release of the Metamorph League and with the release of the Conquerors of the Atlas expansion. When we are looking at currency, there is a whole bunch of new currency that has been brought into the league. Okay. Now, this is great because it means that we've got new Exalted Orbs that we can use to craft. It's really, really exciting. It's really, really fun. A lot of players are going to want to engage in it. If you're a new player and you're wondering if this is something you should get into, the answer is it's risky. So if you come to me and you ask me, let's say in 3.10, in 3.11, in 3.12, hey Iron, have you seen that new currency or that new stuff that's coming out, this particular league? What do you think about it economically, and how do you think it's going to impact the trade leagues and POE? My answer is going to be, and you might not be satisfied with it, but it's the best answer I can give you. It's the answer that I live by and trade by. It's going to be risky. Okay, that means that there are going to be times where you're going to make a decision on something new, and it's just going to make you tons of currency because you're one of the first people who gets into a very risky market, and you figured out a way to make it profitable for yourself. That being said, maybe it's not going to be profitable, and maybe you throw a whole bunch of currency at it, and all that currency goes down the tubes, and you lose out on a bunch of money because players figured out, oh, it's not actually worth that much, right? So a couple of examples of this. We've got a whole bunch of new sorts of exalted orbs that are great, right? But right now, across the board, all of the new stuff, all of the new exalted orbs and the awakeners orbs, they're all on the way down. Because early on in the league, players figured out a way to use the awakeners orbs and use crafting bases in a way that Grinding Gear Games did not intend. So Grinding Gear Games quickly patched that unintentional crafting method, and now things are more towards the way of what GGG originally hoped for and wanted. Okay, so you might say, well, Iron, every time GGG introduces a new currency or a new crafting method or a new prophecy or a new map or a new card, it doesn't mean there's going to be unintentional interactions with it or mechanics with it. You're right. It doesn't mean that there will be. But oftentimes there are. And so the general rule is new stuff is risky. Imagine if you're a player who 2 weeks ago bought a whole bunch of, let's say, Redeemer orbs, right? Let's just say you invested all of your currency into Redeemer orbs rather than traditional Exalted orbs. Well, for you, as a new player, if you were holding them and you didn't sell them at their tipping point, and you thought, well, maybe the market demand is just going down, so maybe I ought to just lower my prices a little bit. If you're still holding on to those Redeemer Exalted orbs right now, you've lost a bunch of currency from when they were at their most attractive selling point. You can even see here on the chart, there was a point where they really dipped down hard, and they're starting to make a bit of a recovery, but they're still in general on the way trending down. New stuff in Path of Exile is incredibly risky. It doesn't mean that it won't make you money, but it doesn't mean that it will. So if you're going to invest in something new, this is my recommendation for you. This is how I invest in new stuff. I dabble in it. I just put a little bit of currency, maybe put 10 to 5% of your total valuation of currency into new stuff. Because maybe that 5 to 10% that you put into new stuff turns out to be awesome and it explodes, and then you can start dumping more and more currency into it as you see the value of it rising, right? So you can move more of your currency portfolio into that as you see the demand for it going up. That's great, right? You'll have access to currency to dump into it because you only invested 5 to 10% of your total chaos evaluation into that particular new method of making currency. Conversely, if you dump all of your currency into the new stuff and it goes bang, then that's great. You've won the lottery, that league. However, if it doesn't go up, you've dumped all of your eggs into one basket, it all went down the drain, and now you won't be able to pivot to something else, and you don't have your currency working for you in any other markets, and so you just lost everything, and now you're essentially starting afresh again. That's a big, big bummer. So those are my 3 tips for you today. General rules of POE economies. And I hope this is very, very helpful to you if you're a new player, especially if you're a G3 guildie. If you guys are asking me questions on this, I'm just going to refer to this video. That's literally what I'm going to do, and I hope you share this video with friends of yours who are getting into the trading and the Bank of Exile side of things, the POE economic side of things, because the reality is these are 3 general rules that are true across multiple different leagues. It's not just dependent on today's league, it's not just dependent on yesterday's league, and it's not just speculative for tomorrow's league or for next month's league. These are some general truisms that are true across the board in Path of Exile, and I hope that they prove to be principles that help you reach your currency goals this league or whatever league it is that you are watching it in. I hope that today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.